$65 billion, and almost none of it was real. It sat in tens of thousands of account statements, in more than 100 countries. Safe, growing, climbing year after year like clockwork. A perfect record. There was just one problem. The money was never there. And the man who made it vanish wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was Wall Street royalty. He'd been doing this in plain sight for decades, while the people paid to stop him looked the other way. So who was he? To understand how this happened, you have to understand who Bernie Madoff was. He'd started his firm in 1960, building it from almost nothing into one of the most respected names in American finance. In the early 1990s, he was chairman of the Nasdaq stock market, one of the most powerful positions in the entire industry. His company was at one point one of the biggest market makers on Wall Street. This was the man people trusted with their life savings. And the truly strange part is that you couldn't just hand him your money. You had to be invited. Getting into a Madoff fund felt like getting into an exclusive club. And that exclusivity was exactly what made everyone want in. What did they get for their trust? Returns that almost never had a bad month, roughly 10 to 12% a year, smooth and reliable, in good markets and bad. While everyone else rode the waves of boom and crash, Madoff's investors just watched their money climb. It was the kind of performance every fund manager dreams of. It was also, as it turned out, completely impossible. Here's the part that sounds too simple to be true. Investigators later concluded that for years, Bernie Madoff wasn't investing the money at all. He wasn't making clever trades. He wasn't beating the market. For long stretches, prosecutors said, he didn't execute a single real trade for his investment clients. So, where did the steady returns come from? From the next person who walked in the door. This is what's called a Ponzi scheme. It works like this. Someone gives you money to invest. Instead of investing it, you keep it. When that person asks for some of it back or wants to see a profit, you pay them with money from a newer investor. As long as more money keeps flowing in than flows out, the illusion holds. Everyone sees a healthy balance. Nobody realizes the balance is just other people's cash being passed around in a circle. The scheme survives on one thing. It can never stop growing. The moment more people want their money out than new people are putting in, the whole structure collapses. Madoff kept his growing for an astonishingly long time. By some accounts, the fraud stretched back to the early 1970s. Madoff himself would later claim it only began in the early 1990s, though he had every reason to make it sound shorter than it was. Either way, this wasn't a quick con. It was a machine that ran for decades, and now about that $65 billion. That number is real, but not in the way it sounds. $65 billion was the total printed on the account statements in 2008. It was what investors believed they had. But that figure included years and years of profits that were never actually earned. Fake gains typed onto paper, compounding on top of each other. Strip away the imaginary returns, and the amount of real cash that people actually handed over was lower, estimated at somewhere around $17 to $20 billion. Let that sink in. The missing money was so large that even the honest version of the number, 20 billion, still made this the biggest fraud of its kind in history. And who actually lost it? When you picture the victims of a $65 billion fraud, you probably picture the very rich. And some were. Hollywood directors, a Hall of Fame athlete, even a Nobel Peace Prize winner, all had money with Madoff. But here's the part most people get wrong. The majority of his victims weren't the wealthy at all. They were ordinary savers, retirees, school teachers, families who had handed over a lifetime of savings. The average victim lost around $250,000, and most lost less than $500,000. For an ordinary household, that's not a setback. That's everything, gone overnight. Charities shut down, university endowments evaporated. People who thought they'd done everything right, who had trusted the most respected name on Wall Street. woke up with nothing. Now here's where the story turns, because the title of this video says nobody noticed for 40 years, and that's the version most people believe. It's also not quite true. Somebody noticed. His name was Harry Markopolos. Markopolos was a financial analyst, the kind of person who looks at numbers for a living. And when he was asked to study Madoff's returns, he later said it took him about 5 minutes to realize something was deeply wrong. His reasoning was almost embarrassingly simple. He looked at a chart of Madoff's performance, and it climbed in a near-perfect straight line, up and up with almost no dips. But real markets don't move like that. Real markets shake, drop, recover. A line that smooth, Markopolos said, wasn't a sign of genius. It was a sign that the numbers were made up. So in the year 2000, he took his findings to the people whose entire job is to catch this. The Securities and Exchange Commission, America's top financial regulator. And nothing happened. So he came back. He warned them again in 2001, and in 2005, and 2007, and 2008. Detailed reports, mathematical proof, year after year handed to the regulators on a plate. And year after year, nothing. When Markopolos first raised the alarm, Madoff's fraud was, in his estimate, only a few $billions, small enough to stop, small enough that thousands of people might never have been ruined. By the time anyone acted, it had ballooned many times over. So the real story isn't that the fraud was invisible, it's that the warnings were ignored. The system designed to protect investors didn't fail because it couldn't see Madoff. It failed because it didn't want to look. In the end, no investigator brought Bernie Madoff down. The economy did. When the financial crisis hit in 2008, panicked investors all over the world wanted their money out. At the same time, suddenly, far more cash was flowing out of Madoff's funds than was flowing in. And that is the one thing a Ponzi scheme can never survive. By December 2008, his clients were asking for around $1.5 billion back. Madoff had roughly $300 million in the bank. The math that had hidden the truth for decades now exposed it in a matter of weeks. He scrambled for a rescue, for some new investor to plug the hole. There wasn't one. So he did the only thing left. He told his family. He confessed first to his brother, then to his 2 sons, both of whom worked in the legitimate, separate trading side of the firm. He admitted that his investment business was, in his own words, one big lie. His sons did not protect him. They went straight to the authorities and turned their own father in. On December 11, 2008, federal agents arrested Bernie Madoff in his Manhattan penthouse. A few months later, he pleaded guilty to 11 federal crimes. The judge sentenced him to 150 years in prison, a number meant to send a message far longer than any human life. Bernie Madoff died in prison in 2021 at the age of 82. And here's something that almost never happens with a fraud this size. Most of the money came back. A court-appointed trustee spent years clawing funds back from those who'd profited, recovering billions, including a single settlement of over $7 billion. Through a separate government fund, victims eventually recovered around 94% of what they'd actually lost. By the standards of financial crime, that's almost a miracle. But some things never came back. The retirees who had to return to work in their 70s, the families whose savings vanished overnight, and the quieter tragedies behind the headlines, including Madoff's own son Mark, who took his own life exactly 2 years after his father's arrest. So in the end, the most disturbing question isn't how one man stole this much. Plenty of people have tried. The disturbing question is how he got away with it for so long, when the warnings were right there in writing year after year and the people in charge simply didn't act. Because Bernie Madoff is gone. But the system that let him run? That's a harder thing to put in prison. If you want more stories like this one, the frauds, the collapses, the money that wasn't what it seemed, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.